Hi, everybody. This is Dana Markson from Rockstar Practice, and I am also owner and director of Mind Soother Therapy Center, which is a group psychotherapy practice in Livingston, New Jersey. Welcome, everyone, to Coping Skills Tool Belt 2021, Episode 2, DBT Skills for Emotion Regulation. I am thrilled to be bringing you this workshop today. I just want to remind you that this is not a clinical training. There are no CEUs for this workshop. I designed this series for you, the person, so that you can learn tips, strategies, tools to increase calm, reduce burnout, really have improved relationships, feel like your bucket is a little bit reduced, you're not overwhelmed, and just really have a higher quality of life. So keep in mind, even though you'll probably take some of these strategies and tools back to your clients, that the goal is for you, the person, to learn something today to help yourself. So first thing I want to ask is, and if you can answer in the chat, please, who has any experience with DBT? You took a training, you led a workshop, you read a book, maybe you're adherently trained. Just let me know if anybody has experience with DBT. Yes, some people have taken my training, and if you're interested, I do have a 20-hour course, a 20 CEU training course on DBT skills to teach online and in person. If you're interested, email me, dana@rockstarpractice.com, and I will send you a link to the training and you can see if it's for you. Okay, great. Let me give you a little bit about my history with DBT. So I've always been a teen therapist since day one. I graduated from social work school. I was working at the time, my internship was at NYU Counseling Services, working with young adults. And I really always identified as a teen therapist. Young adults, I love working with them. I was a young adult at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I really wanted to work with like 13 to 17-year-olds. So my first job out of social work school was at a local inpatient psych ward for adolescents, which was the most amazing and most scary experience. I was very ill-equipped. However, it was amazing training grounds. And what I learned was we were sort of using medication and some cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. And it just didn't seem like it was enough to really help people understand their emotions and make positive changes. Simultaneously, and lucky for me, Marsha Linehan, this was the early 90s, was creating DBT. And it wasn't even really a thing yet. And I had the benefit and the luxury and the privilege of being in a room with her many times in those years because I was just really interested in the Eastern philosophy meets cognitive behavioral therapy. And so I started doing some trainings. I didn't even know it at the time who she was or what was amazing about her. So she is the person who created dialectical behavior therapy. And really, she was working at a hospital in the Western United States. I think it was Washington State, a psych hospital. And she was working with chronically suicidal adults and recognizing at the time, like me, that cognitive behavioral therapy just wasn't enough. It wasn't cutting it. And she looked at what was missing and found the acceptance piece, the validation piece, and the Eastern influence of mindfulness was missing from your regular run-of-the-mill cognitive behavioral therapy, which is also extremely effective and evidence-based and also not enough. So she started talking about the dialectic, two opposing things that are happening simultaneously. I'm feeling better and I'm still feeling suicidal, right? I'm sad and I can feel joy in this moment. And it began to have profound effects and reduce the suicidal urge and activity rate in some of the patients she was seeing. And over time, she wrote the book. She's considered the leader of DBT. There's many books out there. I've gotten trained in DBT, and then what happened was in about 15 years ago, when I was starting to burn out after 10 years of working predominantly with teens, I went back and got trained. And it really significantly impacted how I was feeling as a therapist, a lot less burnout for me personally, more hope for my clients, more hope for me for my clients, and just evidence-based reduction in symptoms. And I couldn't ask for more. Now my entire team is trained in DBT skills. We offer it in everything that we do, amongst other approaches that we have. And what I want to do for you today is sort of think about how can you take some of these DBT skills and use them for yourself in emotion regulation. So when I was thinking about this training, I was like, well, what's coming up? And I could teach mindful breathing. I could teach interpersonal effectiveness, how to get along with people and be kind and compassionate. This really stuck with me though, because I don't know about you, but about 2 weeks ago, my emotional bucket completely overflowed and I needed to step back, and I realized I wasn't using a lot of my DBT skills for emotion regulation. I think that it's very timely now. So I'm going to go ahead and go through them. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will stop and pause as I'm going along and do my best to answer as many as I can. If you have more questions at the end of the workshop, email me and I will do my best to get you an answer. Okay, and what I will tell you is any workshop that I lead, if you can be really super present, fully in, turn off your phone, engage in this process for you, you will get exponentially more out of it. So the first thing that we want to think about in emotion regulation is reducing vulnerabilities. So your vulnerability is the thing that sort of sets you up for your bucket to overflow, for you to shut down, or for you to explode. We always need to look at our vulnerabilities. What's making me more likely to have a negative affect or experience right now? What is reducing my skill use? What is the obstacle to skill use? So the goal is always to reduce vulnerabilities and reactivity and learn effective regulation tools. Okay, so that's the goal of this workshop. And so I'm going to ask you a couple questions and I'd love for you, before we go there, let me go here. Let me go here for a second. So I'm going to ask you all, name some of your vulnerabilities. What are events, situations that make you more sensitive to an emotion-minded urge or reaction? Let me go back for a second and just tell you a little bit about emotion mind, and then I'm going to ask that question again. In DBT, we have 3 states of mind. We have wise minds, we have emotion mind, and we have logical mind. The goal is always wise mind, right? We want to live in wise mind as much as possible. When clients come to us, for the most part, they're coming with an emotion-minded reaction. They're living in emotion minds. They have logic. They could be smart. Their IQ can be off the charts. They cannot access their logical minds when in an emotional state. And so there becomes this disparity. When most people come into our practice, and when I'm emotion-minded, let's say I'm really sad, or maybe about to feel like I'm going to go into a fit of rage, it's because my emotions are over here and my logic is over here, and I'm not able to access logic in that high emotional state. I'm going to walk you through a few techniques. Just want to show you though that emotion mind does not mean emotions. Emotion mind does not mean that you're sad or that you're angry or that you're confused. That's normal, that's typical, expected. Emotions are messages. We need our emotions so that we can stay safe, right? I need fear in a potentially dangerous situation to get adrenaline into my body so I can run like heck and get out of there. I need fear. As we've evolved over time and become very complex human beings, right? Emotions have become more complex as well. So emotion mind is the urges that lead to behaviors that have consequences. For example, if I am a teenager and I have a big test tomorrow and I look at the homework and the study guide and I get completely overwhelmed, like, oh my God, I'm going to fail anyway, and I shut the book, that's emotion mind. That's going to lead to a consequence. I'm going to be ill prepared. I will probably get a poor grade. My parents will come down on me. They might even punish me, so to speak, take away the car. There's consequences to that behavior. In the same example, if my emotion is when I open the study guide, wow, I feel unprepared and scared, and I say, okay, how can I break this down into manageable parts so that I can take the test tomorrow and do well on it? That's me having an emotional urge. Maybe I have the urge to close the book and accessing logic. The combination of those two things is what we call wise mind. The goal for us as humans is to understand wise mind, get in wise mind, and hopefully stay in wise mind. Before I go on to vulnerabilities, is there any questions about emotion mind, wise mind, and logical minds? By the way, that's like a 2-day workshop I just gave you in 5 sentences. Does everyone understand the basic tenet or understand the basic idea of wise mind? Please repeat quickly. Sure, no problem. So emotion mind is when you're having emotional urge, not emotion. So sadness is not emotion mind. Sadness is an emotion. An emotional urge would be if you're sad and the urge is I'm going to hide out under my covers for 3 days. There's consequences to that. You won't have taken a shower, you didn't eat or drink, you didn't brush your teeth, your parents are worried about you. Right? So sadness is the emotion. The urge towards the behavior that leads to a consequence is emotion mind. The way that we get into wise mind is accessing logical steps to manage our emotional urges, and that's called wise mind. Okay, let's move on to vulnerabilities. I'm not going to give you the secret. So I'd love everybody to think back to a situation recently in which you had an emotion-minded urge. So an emotion-minded urge would be, I told my mom that I would bring her cupcakes at 4 o'clock, and I was binge watching my favorite show, and I didn't take her. I didn't get the cupcakes for her. I didn't feel like it, right? That could be a small one. It could be, I had a deadline due at work and I didn't complete it and lied to my boss. Name a situation, you can name it in your mind, where you had an emotion-minded urge recently. It would be better if you can pick an emotion-minded urge that turned into an emotion-minded behavior. So in other words, you actually did the behavior that was emotion-minded. And if anyone wants to be brave and share the experience there, you can put a sentence in the chat. That would be great. Then we have a live experience we can use. Anybody have an emotion-minded urge or behavior recently that they're willing to share? Thank you, Pam. So the political climate, and I overate to self-soothe. Thank you so much. So maybe some anxiety. I'm just going to take a guess here, if I could for a second. Some anxiety about the state of affairs over the last few weeks or years, and your baseline anxiety is higher, and the situation was really tense and upsetting for a while, and food soothed you. Now, what is that in and of itself a problem? Not necessarily. It depends on what that looked like. However, if there's a consequence to it, like I had a really bad stomach ache the next day, or I had tremendous guilt and I beat myself up all day around it, or then I was binging the next day because I started this habit, that would be emotion minded. Thank you so much for sharing that. What are the vulnerabilities in your specific instance? So everyone write in the chat. You don't have to write your specific example. What made you more vulnerable to emotion minds? I already just gave you the answer actually in that example. What makes you more vulnerable? So everyone just plop one in there. Any idea that comes up to mind? I hope you're all reading the other people's answers in the chat. So some of the main ones that I see coming up are lack of sleep or insufficient sleep, anger, anxiety, feeling underappreciated or feeling worthless or feeling useless, right? We got a lot of that. So knowing and understanding your personal vulnerabilities is extremely important in regulation of emotions. Right, feeling futile and unable to affect the change. So I really want you all to just think about for a second your vulnerabilities, and they're different for all of us. I will tell you that I have two children, two daughters, and one of them, from pretty much the minute she was born, she needed to be fed every 2 to 3 hours. And actually, still the case. She's 22 years old and feeds herself every 2 to 3 hours. If not, her blood sugar goes low, her emotional temperature spikes, and she gets into either a fit of rage or she melts. So even though she's 22, still like a 3 or 4 year old. All right. So being undernourished or having low blood sugar is one of her vulnerabilities. She always needs to know that about herself. She can't hope for the best. As a mom, I would never have dreamed of going out on a 5 hour outing without tons of food. I had a cooler with me, a little portable cooler everywhere I went to manage vulnerabilities. Now, I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. I was just like, we got to keep this kid fed. Now I know, no, if she and I are going on a drive and it's going to be a 3 hour drive, I need to have snacks and I need to have choices of snacks. Okay, so that's her vulnerabilities. So I really just want you to take away from this workshop, understanding your vulnerabilities is extremely important. As mental health professionals, we are the holding environment for our clients, patients, clients. We are designed, we are trained to hold their energy, to hold their feelings, to hold their stress, right? That's what we do best. My bandwidth, by the way, I think probably those of you that have been a therapist as long as me as well, is huge. I can hold a lot. I have really trained myself to hold a lot. And if I'm not in touch with what my vulnerabilities are, and if I don't manage my vulnerabilities, A, my foundation will crack, which is not good. And B, I won't be effective at holding anything. It's all going to seep out, and I'm going to be the one that suffers. It's really important that you as a person understand your vulnerabilities. So here's some that I've come up with. You guys have actually added more. Hungry and tired are the two biggest vulnerabilities, right? So really managing sleep and eating. Exercise is one as well. It depends on the person, really. So like if you're a person with ADHD, exercise is your best friend. You need to know if you're a person with ADHD, neurologically, you require more exercise for neurotransmitter, dopamine release, et cetera. I'm not going to get into that now, but you need to know like who you are, if you have a diagnosis, if you have a medical condition, right? Okay. Negative energy. So I'm very vulnerable in a situation where other people have negative energy. That's one of mine because I'm a sensitive person. So if there's a lot of negative Nellies around me, I get really vulnerable, irritable, cranky. That's not good for me. So I need to go into a situation. Let's say I do have one friend in particular that always talks to me about the negatives. Even if there's 5 positives, she only ever talks about the negative. So I have to prepare myself going in that I need to have sort of like a force field, and I picture it a couple ways. How am I going to manage my vulnerability? I got a bubble around me like Glinda the Good Witch. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's floating down, and I'm just going to float around, and that negative energy is not going to penetrate. If it's hunger, I'm going to make sure I have food. If it's tired and I didn't get a good night's sleep last night, maybe I'm going to plan a nap today. Maybe I'm going to clear my schedule later on. Maybe I'm going to do some exercise in the morning if that tires me out more, right? So coping ahead to strategies to reduce vulnerabilities. Feelings of overwhelm. I really want to be careful about the feeling of overwhelm, right? I think if we all stop to think about life, if you think about all the stuff that your clients tell you, it's really overwhelming, right? So overwhelm is sort of like a catchphrase, like I'm bored, right? Or I'm anxious. Those are catchphrase feelings. I want to know what's beneath that feeling of overwhelm. Is it because you feel out of control? Somebody wrote, I feel unable to affect the change. Try to get underneath those kinds of feelings to see if maybe there's a primary feeling, right? So understanding what's going on with you and letting out emotions and feelings out of your emotional bucket with intention rather than when it overflows. Other emotions. So for me, the last 4.5 years, my baseline of anxiety is higher than it has been in a very long time, right? So the political climate, the divisiveness, the out of control feeling, personally, my baseline of anxiety, it was no longer like a 5, it's more like a 25. So I've operated for the last few years at a 25, right? So now if my bucket's 100, I only have 75 left. I need to know that about myself so that when I walk into a situation like work and I'm taking and holding other people's emotions, what do I need to do to reduce my anxiety so that I can hold that? Being really aware of each situation and of who you are and what your vulnerabilities are extremely important. Somebody wrote, can overstimulation environment? Yeah, absolutely. Easily overstimulated. Definitely. The question mark is to fill in the blank. You fill in any of them that cause you to feel vulnerable to emotion mind. Too much pressure. My husband will often say to me at the end of the day, God, people are putting so much pressure on me. That's probably the lens through which he's looking at it. Regardless, it makes him feel vulnerable and it reduces his effectiveness. So anything that gets in the way of you being effective, gets in the way of your mental health, is a vulnerability. Questions about vulnerabilities. Did anyone realize this, that as therapists, we really need to touch base, or mental health professionals, we really need to touch base with our own selves? So I do a check-in with myself every day, by the way. I do a check-in at night, and in the morning I meditate and check in with myself. I do a lunchtime check-in. I try to do a 3-4 o'clock check-in when I have my snack, which happens every 3 or 4 o'clock, and then an evening check-in. So I'm always trying to say, okay, where am I feeling this in my body? By the way, pain is a vulnerability. Physical pain is an amazing vulnerability. I threw my back out a couple weeks ago, and my bandwidth for other people's emotions was significantly reduced because I was super vulnerable to my own emotions. Questions? Great. So the trick here, or the skill here, is to constantly check in with your vulnerabilities. Here's what's awesome about it. You can manage vulnerabilities because you know what they are. It doesn't get thrown at you. You're aware of it. So you can arm yourself with the skills and strategies. In DBT, we call it coping ahead. Like I coped ahead with my daughter and the basket of food that I brought everywhere. What do you need to do to cope ahead with your life, your situation, so that you can reduce your vulnerability? One of the things that I realized was working and living in the same house had its challenges for sure. And so that I really said, I don't want to be all about work. So one of my vulnerabilities is like I get all in and super focused, and then I lose sight of other stuff. So I had to really put in my calendar. I created this amazing Google Calendar, and then I put in some fun time. And so a couple times a week, and then both days on the weekends, I do one hobby, fun activity, self-care activity to reduce my vulnerabilities. Cope ahead, plan ahead to reduce vulnerabilities. Okay. In the last 6 months, year, what emotions have been coming up for all of you? So plop in the chat anything that's been coming up for you. It could be in the last week, 2 weeks, but since March of 2020, what feeling's been coming up? If you haven't written anything in the chat yet, I want to encourage and invite you to participate. Just see if you can just come up with something and plop it in there. Okay, lots of anxiety, stress, exhaustion, overwhelm, lonely, isolation. The good news about that is that we're all we're in the right place together here. So we can hold that together, and I can help hold that for you and share that experience. And so the dialectic is there's good news and bad news, right? So the good news is we're here, we're all in this together, and this is really a challenge. And I have no idea how I'm going to handle this, right? It's really important when you are a mental health clinician, or if you just want to be a well-adjusted, balanced person, to know what you're feeling. You have to get in touch with your own emotions. And I'm going to show you what happens in a second. The way that I teach my clients and the way that I deal with it myself is I manage my own emotional temperature, right? It's interesting. We're doing temperature checks to see if people have fevers, but we're not checking our own emotions. It's really effective when you stop and you pause. Like the other day, I snapped at my husband, and I was like, wow, why did I just snap at my husband? He's like, you just snapped at me. I'm like, yeah, I did. What was that about? He's like, I don't know. And then I went back into my office and I closed my eyes for a second. I'm like, all right, what was that? And I realized that something that happened the night before was really annoying me, irritating me, and I hadn't dealt with it. Right? It's really important that we're checking in with ourselves, taking our own emotional temperature. And by the way, we are responsible for our own thermometers, our own emotional temperature thermometer. You can only change one person on this planet, literally one, and that is you. Cannot change anybody else. You can help offer experiences or opportunities for change, even to your kids. You cannot change them, right? So if you're feeling overwhelmed or not skillful, change it. And I'm going to show you some ways to do that. So this is an emotional thermometer. This is an actual slide from our DBT course. Move my stuff around here a little bit. I'm going to teach you some of these skills now. So let me just explain this to you. Here's an emotional thermometer. So this one is for anxiety and anger. And then I'm going to show you another one that's for sadness and depression. Okay, so this is when there's sort of like an acting out, a bubbling up of emotions. The emotion is rising. Here's Wise Mind. You wake up, you're cheerful. It's January 21st. Things are feeling a little chill right now. You're feeling cool and calm. Okay, and then let's say though you wake up and you're like a 24, this is your baseline. You go downstairs and your kids left spilled milk and waffles all over the kitchen. So now your temperature's rising and you're up here. And then you're like, all right, I'll clean it up later. You go and get dressed and you go and you show up for your first client and they don't show up. And then you're going over here. All right, and you notice it's getting hotter and hotter. Once you're at about 75, before it gets into red, it's really hard to reduce an emotional temperature using a skill. It's really hard to do it. I'm going to teach you a skill that you can use when you get here. The best place to intervene in your own emotional temperature is on the way up, not at the peak. And on the way down, you're in good shape. So emotions are waves like that, right? Most emotions only last about 60 seconds, most primary emotions. It's our secondary emotions that last longer and cause the damage, right? If I get a pit in my stomach and I'm like, oh God, I'm really dreading this talk that I have to do at 12 o'clock today. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to breathe. It's going to be all okay. Boom, up and down. Fear, manage, gone, right? But then if I start telling myself I suck, no one's going to show up, and I start getting really worried and ruminating, that secondary emotion is going to cause my emotional temperature to rise. So you want to use a skill here. My biggest recommendation for you, I'm doing a very abbreviated version of teaching you DBT right here, is breathing. Breathing is the best resource you will ever have in any situation. What I recommend always is 4-8 breathing. I don't know if any of you are familiar with polyvagal theory. Really super interesting. Look it up and get skilled in it or learned in it if you can. It's wonderful. Bottom line, our bodies will take care of us if we use it properly. So if you breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 8, you are actually sending a signal to your brain that you're not in trouble. If your heart starts to race and you're getting really worried, if you do 4-8 breathing, your central nervous system will respond to the 4-8 breathing because it was designed to get you out of trouble if a bear was coming to attack you. let's practice it now for a second. Your emotional temperature is rising. You're starting to get really worked up or angry. You're starting to feel anxious, pacing, worried. Close your eyes for a second. I'm going to walk you through it so you know how to do it. Close your eyes for 1 second and I'm going to guide you. Don't do it yet. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to do it. I'm going to breathe in for 4 and out for 8. So it looks like this. It's not so easy to do. Okay, close your eyes. I'm going to talk you through it. It's hard to get enough practice. You need to have double the amount of out breath without going, you never want to do that. So close your eyes, relax your shoulders, relax your belly. Here we go. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Breathe out, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Rest for a moment. Keep your eyes closed. Let's try that again. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Breathe out, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can open your eyes. Give me some feedback about 4-8 breathing. How did that feel for you? People tell me it's hard. I can't get to 8. I'm out of breath at 6 or 5. What was that like for you? Did you notice any difference in your body? Yawning is your body's need for oxygen, by the way. So if you're yawning, it means you need to learn diaphragmatic breathing. Relaxed, energized, aware, calmer. Okay, this is your best resource in life. You could do 3-6. If you're not ready for 4-8 breathing, you could do 3-6. You could do 2-4 with a little kid. That's how I usually start when I'm working with kids. Let's do some 2-4 breathing. You can do 5-10. You can do 6-12. It's the out breath is twice as long as the in breath. Too focused on breathing out to relax. Shana, it'll come with practice. And so suggestion is you have somebody else count for you, or what I've done is I record in the phone. I record it as a video, an audio note, sorry, and then I play it back. And I put it on people's phone, people like clients' phones, and then I say, okay, when you want to practice your 4-8 breathing, here you go. Right? Or you can just count in your head. It is literally the best exercise you can do to reduce emotions and reduce your emotional temperature. Okay, so I will tell you this, when I sit down, what I teach my team and my clients to do, and I do it myself every time, it's a little bit different now that I'm not sitting down in front of a person in my office, I'm online, but I sit down, I put my feet flat on the floor, and I call it 2 feet, 1 breath, 2 feet on the floor, 1 breath in. And it really just like I got this. I can manage my own central nervous system, right? And especially when I have my more difficult / challenging clients who I know are really going to test me, or maybe we'll have like a higher emotional state, which is harder for me to hold. I do a lot of breathing. Okay, and I suggest breathing intentionally between each session. I also have every family I'm working with before dinner, I invite them to sit on the couch together before they enter the dinner table area and do some 4-8 breathing together. Breathing should never trigger a client. So then you're going too big. If the breathing triggers your client, then start smaller. But this workshop is for you. Focus on you. Okay, focus on practicing it yourself so you can get aware what triggers me, what do I feel. If 4-8 breathing's too much, do 2-4, do 1-2, go. The out breath's twice as long as the in breath. Okay, that's over here. That works anywhere except here. especially if somebody says they're hyperventilating or having a panic attack. It might be too late for this. I'm going to teach you a skill in a minute on what to do when you get to your hot zone. Sometimes you just, if you hit the peak of an emotion, you just got to wait. So you close your eyes, you put a weighted blanket on, you go to a safe space and just ride it out. And I'm talking about you guys. I have a weighted blanket in my house, really helps me. I love it. Especially in the summer with the air conditioning, I like pile that thing on. It really helps me. If you haven't tried a weighted blanket, I highly recommend. Also, if you're working with any age, kid, teen, young adult, it's wonderful. They're great. It reduces anxiety. It just helps your body relax a little bit more under the weight. I'm going to teach you tip in a minute. But so for here, if it's a situation which other people are triggering you, you have to leave. You have to take what we call a brief vacation, which for those of you trained in DBT is the V in improve the moment, which is a stress tolerance skill. So if it's your kid following around you, screaming and throwing things at you, sometimes you have to walk out, go to your bathroom, shut the door. Okay, so there are situations where you can't breathe through it. You just have to either leave or use tip, which I'll show you in 2 minutes. So that was for anxiety, anger, anything where your emotions are bubbling up and you're feeling it. This is for sadness, depression, sort of shutting down, okay, freezing. So I know maybe this is you, maybe this describes you, right? You wake up, your emotional temperature's kind of okay. Yesterday you had a low motivation day and you got through it. So the temperature would be like 25, 50, 75, 100. 100 means you can't get out of bed, you don't show up for work, you cancel all your clients, put the covers over your head, don't take your medication for 3 days, stop showering, you'd be frozen, okay? Same thing, different skill, most likely, right? So you definitely want to do breathing, but you really also more want to get energized here in this situation. So your temperature is going too low, not too high. What are some skills, everybody, maybe somebody or everybody plop into the chat for me, a skill you can use when you're feeling low motivation or like really down, sluggish, depressed. This happens. What is a skill that you can do? Long walk, exercise, get up. One small thing, break it down into manageable parts. Wow, like everybody has, look at all these examples. I think you guys are familiar with this. Right. These are really wonderful examples. All of them are DBT skills. I could name them all as a DBT skill. Really great. Funny videos or my favorite funny movies are always my go-to. Right. So I like watching cute, like pet stuff or watching my own pets because they're super cute. Right. So you want to intervene here with a skill that increases energy, increases humor, gives you a dopamine release, something that makes you happy, that makes you feel like you're mastering something. And even sometimes just getting out of bed and putting on a cute outfit that makes you feel happy, that's enough, right? Break it down into small, manageable parts and accomplish it one at a time. So really something here is to not think about your whole day, but break your day down into manageable parts. When you get frozen, the best skill that you can do is ask for help. So in DBT, we would call that interpersonal effectiveness, asking for what you want or need. So here you probably are going to have to ask for help. Listen, I'm having a hard time getting out of bed. Can you walk me through it? This is where your therapist friends can come into really good use, or if you have a therapist. Okay, I'm just going to move on because I want to show you tip, which I think is really helpful, emotion regulation skill. So I showed you that when your emotional temperature is really low or really high, but mostly really high, tip is a DBT skill that I find to be tremendously useful. Okay, so if you're rising in anger and anxiety and you feel it palpating right before that red zone, that hot zone, temperature is an intense and quick change of temperature. So drop yourself in an ice bath. Sounds horrible. Totally works. Okay. You can, what Marsha Linehan of DBT recommends is fill a sink with cold water and ice and plunge your entire face into it. Personally, I have never tried that. That would not be for me. It works. It will snap you out of whatever loop your brain is going on, and it'll reduce your emotional temperature after. It does something to your neurotransmitters. You can hold an ice cube. You can hold a frozen orange or a frozen lemon. So in the winter, you can go outside just for a minute, not even, get a blast of ice cold air. Don't put a coat on, or open the front door if it's really cold out. If you live in a cold climate, get a blast of cold air. Opposite is also true. Something warm. So very cold shower, very hot shower. Change your temperature. It's something that you can usually instantaneously do. Ice pack on your head, ice pack on your cheeks, ice pack on right behind your neck, right behind your ears. Okay, this is something that we have at our fingertips. Change your temperature. I do this all the time. It's kind of unintentional and it also works. So like if I'm like, I go outside. I'm a fresh air person. It really lights me up and fuels me anyway. I love taking my dog with me. I'm also contributing to her. She loves being outside. Okay, so that's the T and tip. The next thing you can do, which is your really second to the 4-8 breathing, which I already taught you, by the way, that's paced breathing here. Second to it is intense exercise. So studies show that intermittent bursts of intense exercise for people with ADHD or anxiety absolutely has a profound effect on their neurotransmitters. Okay, we have to give this gift to ourselves. So, and I do this in my office all the time. It seems to be a little more potent in my office. I will get up and just be like with my client, get up, we're going to do some jumping jacks. If my client's spiraling up, there's a lot of anxiety, but this happened, that happened, blah, blah. So, okay, let's get up for a second. We're going to do some jumping jacks. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I would suggest 30 seconds to a minute of intense exercise. I do this also. My little kids used to have a ton of energy. So we had like the inside trampoline. It's like a little baby trampoline. Boom, 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 boom. Right. And by the way, I love that thing. It's called a rebounder. If you don't have an exercise ball or rebounder, if you have an exercise ball in your house, you can sit on and bounce. Okay, intense though. Jumping jacks, jumping rope, jumping up and down. Slamming a ball against the wall, not inside your house, a basketball against the outside of your house. 1, 2, 3, where you're getting your heart rate up. After your heart rate's up, it'll come back down, right? And it's like the endorphins get released into your body and your body feels calmer. When your body feels calmer, it sends signals to your mind that things are okay. It's okay to be calm. Things are calmer. Okay. Really short bursts of intense exercise. Obviously, if you have any kind of medical condition or any reason why this wouldn't work for you, please don't do it, right? Or maybe you can do just like some short bursts like this. Do something that sort of gets your heart rate up if it's indicated for you. The first P is pace breathing. This would be our 4-8 breathing. It has a pace to it. In and out. So something that we're counting and has a pace. You can also use a metronome. I don't know if I have a metronome app on my phone. It goes tick, tock, tick, tock. You can set it to as fast as you like it. And then you can go doon, 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 hold, out, 2, like that. Okay. And then the final P is progressive muscle relaxation. I imagine many of you are very well aware of this skill, and it absolutely 1000% works. I realize by my 3rd session of the day, and I'm only doing 3 sessions a day max because I'm doing all these other things. I used to do 10 in a row, and then my body I would like come home and slither into bed, right? Never really taking care of myself. That was not good self-care. And I had a lot of like physical ailments at the time as well. I got to check in with my body. So when I'm in this chair, I'm sitting in this chair all day long for the most part, other than walking the dog. I want to just make sure that all my body parts are relaxed. And usually there's one area that I'm not realizing in the moment is holding tension. For me, my shoulders. So a quick progressive muscle relaxation. Everyone close your eyes. I'm going to walk you through it. First, we're going to do a quick body scan. Notice if there's any place in your body that's holding tension. Like even if you're sucking in your belly right now, let it go. If you're squeezing your glutes, if your shoulders are up like this, just go, let it go. Everybody close your eyes. Gonna breathe in for 4 and out for 8. So practice that 4-8 breathing on your own right now. Keeping your eyes closed. What you want to do is just body part by body part, breathing some relaxation. So the way that I like to do it is to tense it and relax it. So starting with your eyebrows, you raise your eyebrows all the way up and you relax them. Purse your lips together and relax. Very gently, then you go to your teeth, clench your teeth nice and gently. Relax. Raise your shoulders all the way up. Relax. Make a fist, 2 fists. Nice and tight, you can leave it in your lap. Relax. Squeeze your butt muscles together. Relax. Quads. Relax. Your calves, you can squeeze them by going on tippy toes and like really putting tension into your calf muscles and then putting your heels back down. And then you want to squeeze your toes, so you squeeze them under your feet. And relax. Now I just did that in about 2 minutes. My suggestion would be to take at least 5 to 10 minutes and give yourself the gift of progressive muscle relaxation. It really will help your body. I hold a lot of tension in my body. And sometimes when I don't even realize it, when my body's tense, I'm tense. And that becomes a vulnerability for me. And so when a situation arises that might cause an emotion-minded reaction, I'm already vulnerable. So for me, pain in my physical body is one of my vulnerabilities. I need to manage that in advance. So tip is your best friend. If you use these tips and tools and strategies every day in your life, you will feel better. It's evidence-based. There's nothing here that's going to hurt you. It goes with you wherever you go, by the way. Your pace breathing goes with you wherever you go, and so does your exercise and progressive muscle relaxation. Sometimes temperature, you have to be in the right place, often not, right? So there's no excuses. It goes with you, this toolbox, everywhere you go. Questions about any of the skills that I taught you today? DBT skills for emotion regulation. Questions, comments, how do I use it? Any obstacles? I'm putting my email right now in the chat for anybody that wants it. Yes, you might feel like you need to take a nap. My suggestion, use the temperature in tip right now. If you need to be energized, go get some cold water. Nice cold water. Please give me feedback. Invite your friends. If you're a New Jersey therapist, please communicate with me. Everybody communicate with me if you have feedback or questions. If you have a particular skill that you'd love to share in this forum, I'd love to hear from you. We are booking out some guests starting in March. And I really want to honor you for showing up today to take care of yourselves. And really, you know what you can do? What I do is I set a reminder on my phone. Hey Siri, remind me at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning to practice my tip skills, or to manage self-care, or to manage vulnerabilities. Okay. I want to honor and support you. Blessings for a beautiful day. Bye, everyone.